The title race is officially over. Arsenal still have plenty to look forward to in terms of a Champions League campaign, but in terms of the league, maybe it's time to start looking over our shoulder instead. We will be looking forward, however, to a March month, which will contain the deadline to Arsenal's sporting director search, with even a new name to discuss in today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much for your patience. Apologies, there was no show yesterday. I was, of course, in Nottingham travelling back. My train was earlier than expected, and I wouldn't have been able to fit in the show and the travel to the station and getting there in time to be able to reach it and upload and do all the usual stuff that I need to do. So apologies, there was no show yesterday. I hope you can accept that. That will happen on occasion, of course, especially when there's a match the day before and I haven't got time to pre-record something, an evening game, and then the morning game the day after makes things quite challenging, of course. But yes, I hope that you can forgive and forget no show yesterday. But we're going to talk a little bit about, of course, today, the game. We're going to talk about a lot, to be honest, to do with the game, a lot to do with the sporting director situation. We're going to talk about a lot to do with, well, just a lot to do with Arsenal. I imagine that we'll be getting opportunities to hear your comments in the chat box as well. Who knows? Maybe we'll even get some calls on, maybe, if there's a real clamour for them. If not, we won't, but we will be getting plenty of your thoughts on the current situation as well, of course. Right, let's jump, though, to the chat box. Good morning to those joining us. Blackshine, Paul, Carlton, Amira, Cardi, Tom, Matt G, Stevie, Mohammed, Shari, Mike, Jamil, Martin, Ashley, Morgie, Rob, Knowledge, and Carl, and P Sharp, and Wilson, Colin, Z, Obelix, Ken. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. I really appreciate you all being here. Let's, however, jump to today's stories. It's not that. It's me forgetting to go back to the first slide. We're starting this morning with the game from Wednesday. Nottingham Forest 0. Nottingham Forest 0, Arsenal 0 in the City Ground. It was, I think, a pretty predictable game overall. I'm pretty sure it was pretty predictable in the end. Arsenal defended well. Arsenal's midfield did well, besides Martin Odegaard, I would argue. And the forward attacking players in the game sadly were unable to break down the Nottingham Forest defence. It was interesting listening to Nuno Espirito Santo after the match, talking about how indeed he'd kind of run away from the back five situation he usually goes for and decided instead to bring an extra midfielder into the team because he knew that Arsenal weren't going to play with a striker. Our way in which we set up right now it's incredibly predictable for opposition managers, opposition coaches to try and find a way of setting up, because Arsenal don't have a centre forward to choose from, because all of Arsenal's attacking players are currently out injured, which is obviously of a massive frustration for us. And naturally, as a result, it makes things very easy for opposition teams to work out how to kind of set up. And it just, we have a question about where is the goal going to come from? Like, where is a goal going to come from right now? Because it feels like all of the emphasis is falling a little bit on Ethan Nwaneri to be the creative spark, and we did go close a couple of times. Of course, from set pieces, we are still threatening. Mika Moreno had a great chance to score. It was ultimately a good stop by the Forest goalkeeper in the end, with the situation that we created for ourselves. There was a couple of moments where Forest, of course, did get in behind, and we defended them really, really well in the first half. Gabriel with a great challenge on Chris Wood. Second half, William Saliba with a great challenge on Chris Wood. And outside of that, they didn't really offer. I think David Raya had to make one save, really, during the game. That was really testing of him. Everything else was pretty calm and chill. But it just felt like a war of attrition that was never going to find a conclusion and never going to result in a goal. And that's the worry at the moment, is that are we going to struggle in these games coming up before we get Martinelli, before we get Saka back, to find the back of the net? We've got Champions League matches coming up against PSV, where, yes, having a good defensive record will suit us to a degree, but at the same time, we've got to find the back of the net, and that's proving really, really hard right now to find the back of the goal. We made some changes during the game. Jorginho started this fixture over Thomas Partey. Of course, Partey's fitness remains to be a big question mark, and so maybe playing him 2 games in 4 days was unadvisable. So instead, what we saw was that Jorginho came in. I thought Jorginho did well. I thought Declan Rice had a much better game also. Odegaard didn't. Odegaard, again, having another rather poor, ineffective display, playing in that attacking midfield role, and he just can't seemingly find his groove. Of course, he's missing the quality players in front of him that he usually has access to. But even before that, he was still not having the best of seasons, and it's just not having a very good campaign at all, is Martin Odegaard. Mikel Merino playing up top, as besides that header, did very little. It was a good pass through to Zinchenko, but Zinchenko was offside. Another chance that Arsenal should have... I know it was offside and wouldn't have counted, but the fact that Arsenal didn't even score that chance is very telling, I think, about where they're at this moment in time. So certainly that was obviously also a big issue. Zinchenko comes on in the second half, plays midfield. A lot of people have really called on the idea of Zinchenko playing midfield. I've never really, from a personal perspective, been on that end, I've never really been on that side of it. And I think that we're seeing to a degree why. He does offer something a bit different, but it's not really giving us much of a difference. It's not changing things too drastically. It's not offering the passes and the movement that we really have been crying out for. That one move that we did make, of course, he ended up being offside for it. And Calafiori started at left back, got a yellow card really early on in the game. Really harsh yellow card, I thought, at that early on in the game. I know it's a bit cynical, but I think the referee could have probably kept his cards in his pocket. He booked Milenkovic, I think, a minute after, kind of balancing things up, if you like. But that meant that he had to come off at half time, and he had a really good chance to score. Of course, really good spin and finish that was just lacking that little bit of curl that would have seen it bounce off the post and into the back of the net. And certainly that was the best chance that Arsenal created during the game, that opportunity. Declan Rice also had a great run into the box that saw him blocked also. That was also a better opportunity that we created. But again, yeah, we couldn't score. And that's where Arsenal are at right now. We're very blunt in attack. We're just not very threatening. We're solid in defence. We're solid in midfield, at least in the defensive part. And we just cannot seem to find a way of breaking down and breaking through these lines and breaking through these teams to give us the opportunity to score. It's proving very frustrating, I think, for Arteta, very frustrating for obviously the players involved. And until we get some of these players back, I can't see it really changing. Raheem Sterling came off the bench and did nothing. He was actually complained at on three occasions by Arteta, I noticed, towards the end of the game as well. Kieran Tierney came on, thought he did well. I was calling before the match, I'd quite like to see a back five with Kieran Tierney playing in a wing-back role, Ben White playing on the right-hand side as well, offering something different. Back three of Timber, Saliba and Gabriel, just to give you that foundation. And I still stick by this. It's something that I'd like to see us use with Trossard and Nwaneri playing more centrally to get them closer to the box and using the wing-backs instead for width. That's what I'd like to see. But again, I can't see Arteta going down that route. I've asked him about changing formations more drastically, but doesn't seem to be in the mindset to do that. So yeah, that's kind of the game. That's where we were, and he ended it with 0-0, and that with Liverpool beating Newcastle, I think it's happened of what we thought was inevitable at this stage. With Liverpool certainly going to be title elect at this point. I don't see any team catching them, chasing them down. Even if Arsenal were to win their game in hand, the gap would still be 10 points to Liverpool, and I just can't see them dropping 10 points and Arsenal closing that gap between now and the 10 games that would remain. 10 points in 10 games. I don't see Liverpool dropping that. They've got, yes, some tricky fixtures still. Yes, Arsenal have still got to play them, but it's going to be very hard with Arsenal's current situation. As I pointed out before, Arsenal 6 points clear of third place Nottingham Forest, 7 points clear of fourth place Manchester City, 8 points clear of Chelsea as well in fifth, and 10 points clear of Newcastle in sixth. I still think Arsenal need to look a little bit over their shoulder. We need to start picking up some points. Manchester United are a very poor side right now, sitting in 14th place in the league, but they've still got forwards. They've still got the opportunity to get a result against us. It's by no means. If you can't score goals, picking up points is it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to pick up points. And so Arsenal need to find a way of doing that between now and the end of the campaign. But it's going to be the maximum points Arsenal can pick up is 87. That's the maximum number of points that Arsenal can pick up, or 97 is the number of maximum points that Liverpool can, of course, pick up between now and the end of the season. They look like getting a 90-plus season. They're certainly on course for a 90-plus season as well. So, yeah, that's the game. That's where Arsenal are at. And we'll probably get some of your thoughts on the game in part two. If you want to keep your mind off of the senior side, get yourself down to the Emirates Stadium tonight, because Arsenal are taking on Manchester United in the quarterfinals of the FA Youth Cup. Of course, a competition that Arsenal reached the final of not so long ago. Adam Birchall is now, of course, in charge of the Arsenal under-18s. I sat down with Adam Birchall earlier on in the week for a really interesting conversation, actually, about kind of, well, youth football in general, and talking and discussing about his story and his player story. We talked a lot about Miles Lewis-Skelly. We talked a lot about Ethan Waneri. We talked a little bit about Max Dowman. We spoke, and I asked him personally about the exits of Chido Obi-Martin and Aidan Heaven, and kind of the frustrations with that, but also the young players that have been brought into the under-18 setup. I asked him about Kader O'Neill. He spoke about some of the other players. But it was a real interesting conversation. If you read my piece that's in football.london this morning, we talk about the fascination he's got with youth football, this idea that if you do well with players, you lose them because they move on to higher age groups and things like that. But we also talked about the transfer side of it, the recruitment side of it, the development side of it. So give it a read. As I say, it's available on the FL website. If you just type in Arsenal Youth Project Fascinates Coach, as Mikel Arteta awaits the next one, and Lewis Skelly. So give that a read if you haven't done so already. But yes, tonight, FA Youth Cup quarterfinal at the Emirates. I believe there are tickets still available. And moving to what is the headline news story of this morning, and that is, of course, the piece and the article that was written yesterday by David Ornstein, talking about the Arsenal sporting director situation. Arsenal expect to have a decision in March on who is going to be the man to take over that role of sporting director at the club. Andrea Berta is a new name in the fold, the Italian Atletico Madrid sporting director up until the start of 2025, been at the club for well over a decade, involved in deals like Antoine Griezmann, of course, Rodri from Villarreal to Atletico Madrid. As you can see, Morata, of course, some other big deals across those 10 years that have helped Atleti and Diego Simeone to compete with Barcelona and Real Madrid and win titles and cups there. Of course, he is alongside a number of other targets. Thiago Scura of Monaco, Roberto Alabe of Real Sociedad, are the other two key candidates also. And we also know that Jason Ater, the current interim sporting director at Arsenal, is also a candidate. And an expectation is that a decision will be made next month. Could be next week, but next month is when the expectation, in March, that a decision will be made on the sporting director for Arsenal for the foreseeable future. So finally, it seems that we will be getting a conclusion to this scenario. Thank goodness, because goodness me, do we need it. We need a conclusion. We just need to know what's going to happen so we can kind of have our head screwed on a little bit tighter regarding our opinions on what's going on. I sincerely hope that it is an external appointment. I think Berta would be a very interesting appointment, certainly, from his experience at a Champions League level club like Atletico Madrid, and all the deals that's been done. I mean, people that have been crying out for kind of a sporting director that's worked at one of the biggest clubs in Europe and won things there. Andrea Berta certainly fulfills that desire that a lot of fans have got. Roberto Alabe makes a lot of sense, I think, from an Arsenal standpoint, from some of the deals that he's done, stepping that up to the next level. But also, of course, we are seeing other names like Thiago Scura. It was my understanding that Thiago Scura of Monaco, that had kind of run its course a bit, that his name really wasn't in the fold as much recently, but maybe that has changed. But that was certainly what I last heard about Thiago Scura of Monaco, that it wasn't somebody that the club were looking at in the end. And of course, Jason Ater, who for me, I think certainly should continue at the club in like a technical director position potentially, but I don't want to see, from what happened in January, Jason Ater taking on that role as kind of the figurehead. I'd like Arsenal to go external. I'd like Arsenal to go and bring in somebody to challenge the scenario, to bring in their own ideas, bring in some new ideas about where Arsenal can go and work with Mikel Arteta, of course, at the club also. So, yeah, very intrigued to see how that goes down. I love this from Oliver. It says, can definitely spot a striker. Yeah, if there is a club that have signed strikers over the last decade, it is Atletico Madrid. That is for sure. Right, let's go to part 2 then. Your questions, your thoughts and more right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we tackle some of your questions, your thoughts, your queries, your theories, and more in the comments section. So if you've got some of your thoughts that you'd like to throw into the chat, now is the time to do so. Use the little capital Q, or rather a big capital Q, and I'll do my absolute best to try and answer as many of them as I can. So yes, please do. Start dropping them in and I'll go through as many of them as feasibly possible. Ken says, no one even looked at a situation where Chris Wood elbowed Mikel Merino in the throat. I didn't even see it. Ken, I don't even know what you're referencing. I don't know if I can find it on social media. I'm sure that usually these things are done. Let's have a quick look. Wood Merino. Nothing's coming up so far. If I type in elbow, does that work? Elbow. Let's see if I can find it this way. There is a little kind of not a clip, but there is a. Oh, here we go. Here's a video clip. So Wood's looking at Merino. I don't think there's anything in that. No, I don't think I want to see pens given for this. It's just he doesn't even touch his face, and Mikel Merino goes down holding his face. Yeah, no, there's not enough in that for me, Ken. So sorry, mate. I'll give you the kudos one against Miles Lewis Skelly, but I don't think so. Let's scroll up a little bit more. So Jamil says, should we consider a long-term replacement for Odegaard? He should be taking up the mantle with so many players out, but it looks like he's not capable of making a difference, which is very worrying. We should certainly be looking at trying to add a player that can give us, competition in those areas. I've talked about Eberechi Eze a lot. As somebody that I think would be a really astute piece of business by Arsenal for the summer in an attacking midfield type of role. So, but also competing with Odegaard, playing with Odegaard in other positions as well. It's definitely an area that Arsenal need to go out and find somebody that I think that we can offer some different types of views and angles as well. Christian says, hi, Tom. We have Nathan Butler-Oyedeji on the bench, who is a striker. Although he's young, why can't we give him an opportunity during the course of the game? He will have more of a striker's instinct. Christian, I've asked this to Arteta. He didn't bite it. Jordan Campbell from The Athletic also asked about it. And again, he kind of didn't really go for it. I don't know why Nathan Butler-Oyedeji has not been given an opportunity off the bench when Arsenal clearly need a goal. I don't have a clue why that they have not been used. Sufyan says, do you miss Eddie Nketiah? I mean, you could certainly say that during this period of time that he would be playing. He'd definitely be playing, wouldn't he? He'd definitely be getting minutes. He'd definitely be getting an opportunity to score. But £30 million was a very good sale. A very, very, very good sale. So I don't think it was the wrong choice. It looks really easy with the benefit of hindsight to say now that we would benefit from having Eddie Nketiah here, but it's not like he's gone to Palace and pulled up trees, is it? He's had a very difficult start to life there. So £30 million, I think, is still better off having than Eddie Nketiah. Gary says Monchi would be my choice. He has done great at Villa. He's managed to get Rashford and Asensio despite them having plenty of offers and negotiated massive wage cuts and sold the Villa project to them. That's, of course, the Villa project that, yes, it's in the Champions League, but Villa currently 10th in the Premier League table, winning one of the last 5 games. I don't think necessarily, Gary, that is the right... I mean, I like Monchi, and I think what he's done at Villa over the short term has been good, but I don't look at Monchi as ever a long-term vision kind of sporting director, and sporting directors tend to hang around usually longer than coaches. Maybe not in an Arsenal scenario, but... I'm not sure that the Monchi model fits with Arsenal. It fits with Emery because Emery's kind of short hops. And at the moment, a lot of Villa fans are questioning Unai Emery's position at the club, with them sitting 10th in the table. But I'm not sure the Monchi would have been the right choice. It would have been maybe if we had Unai Emery, at the time, maybe those two together would have been better. But sadly, not in this situation. Raymond says, any credibility in the theory that Miles Lewis-Skelly's red card should be rescinded as there was a foul on him by Kudus? I mean, I think there is a foul from Kudus first, but I don't see this one being overturned by an appeal, and certainly there's no information that an appeal is set to be lodged. Jackie says, Tom, I know you're probably sick of this question, but do you think the club gave up on the league and the Champions League and placed the club finances the model above signing anybody? No, Jackie, I don't think that. Bron says, could we see Calafiori at the left 8 role during this tough period? I don't think so. We've got other players like Rice and Moreno and Zinchenko I think would all be playing in that left 8 position before something drastic like Calafiori playing there. Says, sporting director can only do with the amount of money given to them. If they don't bring in talents for low price and turns out to be good, then they are useful, or else it's just up to the owner's mood whether they spend. Of course, they also have to work within the confines of those restrictions, but it's also up to those in charge to work with that. At a high-level club like Arsenal, you need to have the ability to be able to find solutions based upon certain budgets, based upon certain financial quotas that you have. You have to be able to find solutions within that. It's not an excuse that Arsenal have a low amount of money to not sign anybody. It's never an excuse for that. Not signing anybody is inexcusable. So it's never about the budget and the size of it. It's more to do with the ability of the sporting director to find the solutions within the confines that you have. And sadly, that was failed in January. Nika says, we are very slow with the ball and too passive. Not many runs in behind the lines. Too easy for the opponent to set their defensive block against us. Would love to see a more fast, chaotic attacks. I agree on the chaos factor. I think we're far too predictable. We don't seem to have a level of unpredictability about things either. So, yeah, I would 100% agree with you on that. We are lacking that. Kind of just that chaos factor, as I mentioned. That's a really key thing we're missing. Ashley says, bless the Ethan, Leo, Odegaard, Moreno, but they don't have the pace and power to move people to bring Semenyo, Isak, or Sesko. Heck, bring me Adama Traore on a free. I need forwards to scare the bejesus out of defenders. David says, hi, Tom. Would you think that we should try Calafiori up front, as he scored 2 cracking goals as a left back? And on Wednesday, that strike against the post made me think that he might be an option. It's interesting, isn't it? I don't think so. I mean, for the same reasons that we thought we were impressed by Mikel Merino and his work against Leicester when he came off the bench, we're starting to look at some of the things that Calafiori does and think, oh, he might be decent. I really don't think... I personally feel that my solution is the one that I'd go for, with Nwaneri and Trossard as a dovetailing pair, playing with wing-backs for your width and moving and changing the structure significantly. That's what I would go for. That's how I would go about solving those problems. Gary says, Cunha would be my choice for the centre attacking midfield to help Odegaard's competition. We need a player who can drive with the ball, create and score from distance and hardly ever get injured. Cunha, of course, a player that has been courted by Arsenal in the past. Whether or not they go for him in the summer remains to be seen. Carl says, Tom, what do you make of the encounter between Gabby and Rice? It's just very normal for football players to have discussions, heated discussions sometimes. Very normal indeed. Shane says, Tom, are you worried about the potential of Saliba and Gabriel leaving next season? Of course, there's always a worry there, especially if big teams come in for them with big prices. So, yes, of course, I've got worries. I think anyone sensible would have worries about that. Philhead says, reports saying Arsenal have to do a big sale to do all the summer business they want to do. Could we possibly see Martinelli leaving? I mean, we're short enough as attackers without Jesus being out as well. I think that's on the lines of, if Arsenal wanted to do everything in their dreams, yes, you would probably have to move play on, not just for finances, but also for spaces. You know, people talk about bringing in a left winger. Well, if Martinelli and Trossard are still here next season, I don't see Arsenal bringing in a left winger because we have 2 there. So I don't see that happening. I think it's to do with space and money, not just financial implications. But yeah, Martinelli or Trossard leaving would therefore then open up a spot, I think, for Arsenal to move for a left kind of wide player in the summer on top of the striker that we know that we all obviously do need. Bulgaria Gooner says, who do you expect to see come in as that sport director? I genuinely don't know. I don't know who it will be. There is no indication of a front runner right now. That is all still being very quietly considered inside the club, but I don't know. I genuinely haven't got a clue who is going to get that one at the moment. Banerjee says, in what order would you rank the candidates for sporting director? My hunch for the job is Ashworth because of his links to Richard Garlick. Of course, they used to work together at the Premier League. Was it the Premier League or was it West Brom? They did used to work together in a capacity. I would go Alabe, Berta, Ashworth, Skuro, Ato. That's probably the order I would go in. I'm not sold on Ashworth. I heard some worrying things about his time at Manchester United and why he left so quickly. It could be just a Man United problem. But yeah, not sure. A Tiger and Guinness says, Tom, have you heard the rumours about Arsenal pre-season being held in Hong Kong this year? Yes, there are rumours about that. But nothing is confirmed right now. Still waiting on final confirmation. But that is a rumour that has been going round. I'm not expecting it to be in America because the Club World Cup is in America. So I don't think it would be there. Oliver says it's moving into those positions in the way the opposition can't plan for it. Mark says, I'm a real Gooner. In response to I'm a real Gooner, he says Raya is pretty speedy in short bursts, or at least he can outrun a Forest midfielder. Yeah, we can get some pace with Raya up top. Mr. Thugi says, I would move Odegaard to the left 8 and Waneri into the 10, put Rice behind them, and then maybe a midfield goals could solve more of those problems. Unfortunately, it would then mean Sterling starting as well. Yeah, tricky. Carl says, I did mean it's normal. I wonder what sparked the discussion, as in, did we miss something? I think it was about Rice's delivery at the end for the last free kick. I think Gabriel was just frustrated with the quality of Rice's delivery with the last kick of the game, that it didn't go into a dangerous position. I think that's why they were having a bit of a back and forth. The Refurb branch says, anyone else sick of this negative attitude from fans? Be happy with what we have achieved this season, and I assume that meant move on. I think fans have got a right to be frustrated, especially with the way in which we approached, the January window. That was a failure. There's definitely things within our control that not within our control that have contributed to Arsenal's lack of competition with Liverpool this season, without a doubt. And I think they're the primary reasons why the season hasn't gone the way that that we wanted. But there are also things within our control that we didn't change and we didn't act upon. So that's why I think there is a justification for frustration at the club, without a doubt. But the primary reasons why Arsenal haven't won the title this season are certainly ones with it out of their control. And I don't, even though I think that it was an absolute colossal failure not to do anything in January, I don't think there was any signing that we could have made regarding any signing that we could have made that would have turned Arsenal into suddenly beating Liverpool to the title. I don't think there was any signing that would have done that for us in January. But not signing anybody and potentially costing us in other competitions is really unforgivable. Really unforgivable. Vanajit says, Tom, can you elaborate on what you heard about Ashworth at United? Personally, I'd also go for Alabe. I mean, I heard a lot about the Eric Ten Hag contract decision and some of his suggestions for potential managers. There was rumours that he was kind of behind the whole Gareth Southgate situation. Again, these are just rumours, but they are things that do affect your view of a potential candidate. As of course, you look at some of the transfers that United made in the summer have not worked out. Agate, who else have we got? Xerxes. They aren't signings that have improved that situation. The fact he was let go so quickly is not of particular encouragement. Lenny Yoro, United really needed a really impressive defender, and they went out and signed a teenager for a huge sum of money that's not going to have an immediate impact, and United need an immediate impact. Yoro is the type of player that a Liverpool or an Arsenal or a City would sign, already established up at the top end of the table, and easing that young figure in. When you're in need of a player, like you think about when Arteta arrived, right? He signed Partey to be Arsenal's midfield transformative figure. And that's the type of signing you make for a club that need to push upwards. If you're looking at a club like United, who are in a very similar situation to Arsenal at the start of the season when Arteta took over, to when they decided to stay with Eric Ten Hag, ultimately they made the wrong choices in the market. Bulgarian says Ashworth had very little say on transfers in the summer. He was against the idea of Amorim mid-season. He suggested waiting for the summer. I can't believe that he had very little to say in transfers when that was one of his primary goals. I certainly heard of the managerial situation, being as is. Yes, he was against Amorim, but he was also for some pretty other concerning ideas like Southgate. Sanuga says we've got 5 left backs, but we can't have 3 left wingers. Make it make sense. Obviously, we don't have 5 left backs. We have 5 players that can play left back. You include players like Timber and Tomiyasu and Kivior, and of course those players. But in reality, specific left backs, even Miles Lewis-Skelly we include, isn't a left back. If you look at natural left backs, we've got Tierney, Zinchenko, and Calafiori obviously has been playing majority games at left back, but is by trade a left-sided centre half. So it's important to get that right. And so, Nuga, I do notice that whenever you leave a comment, you don't then reply to the comments left behind them. So let me know why that is. Aoife says, what do you think about how our pressing shape makes it hard to reconfigure the midfield since Ødegaard leads with the striker? The other midfielder must be comfortable in the 6 and 8, and I feel this really limits us. Just in terms of our pressing, it seems that teams can bypass our press with obviously a long ball, a chip into midfield sometimes, or a direct pass through to their 6. It does enable them to bypass our press, but often if we're pressing, if we get a turnover high up the field, we then don't have enough players up there to create much of it. I sometimes think Arsenal need to be a little bit more shrewd and savvy, sit back themselves, and try and hit on the counter when the opposition have got more players committed further upfield. I think if you're trying to win the ball high up the pitch, yes, that can have benefits, but you then don't tend to have enough players. If you can win the ball within your own half and counter-attack, you can have a numerical advantage quite often. The problem with that is that we are, as Arsenal are right now, we lack that pace and speed that we need from Martinelli and Saka to be able to more effectively hit teams on the counter from deeper positions on the field. And that at the moment is what is really stopping us from being effective counter-attacking in our own half. And that's why we press so high up right now as well. Yeah, there are a lot of cooks at Man United, Drago. Yes, there are. Many, 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 many. But you can't just disregard Ashworth's role in some of the decisions, some of the suggestions that we're hearing as well. I think it'd be really dangerous to just disregard some of what was done at Manchester United while he was, of course, there. He was also widely criticised for his work at Newcastle. I know that there were some signings, of course, made, but there was a lot of feeling and sense that, like, Alexander Isak wasn't Ashworth. That was kind of something that was in the works prior to Ashworth's arrival at Newcastle. And then some more recent deals that had been done from Ashworth at Newcastle before he left for Manchester United, again, were scrutinised and have been scrutinised. He's not got a good record he's not got a good view from Newcastle fans. And I know that will be affected to in part because he left. But from speaking to some people who cover Newcastle, I don't get a good glowing report about Ashworth's work at Newcastle either. So that also is of concern. Yes, I think he did a good job at Brighton, but moving further up the table into some of those other teams, the reports I get from fans of those clubs and from people who cover those clubs as a job, it's never a glowing report. So yeah, that's definitely a concern. I'm organized says, Tom, seriously, how many matches do you honestly see us winning to the end of the season? I don't know, mate. I don't know. It's an impossible question right now. It's hard seeing. And, oh goodness me! Well, that's weird. StreamYard just wanted to throw up Andrea, but I didn't even click anything, and it wanted to throw Andrea Berta. Maybe it's trying to answer questions itself. StreamYard's opinion clearly is that Andrea Berta is who they want. But yeah, I don't know where the next win's coming from, mate. I'm very worried. I think naturally we should be very worried right now. It's a frustrating one. Oliver says Declan Rice at 8 allows us to dribble past the rest of the defence when we turn over the ball in our half. It's why Zubimendi will help the attack and not just make us more tidy. Prodolawane says, how do you want to do transition with the likes of Marino and Trossard, even when we have Saka, Martinelli? Arsenal seem to be quite thick when it comes to counter-attacks. Thick, I mean kind of like trudging, like they're running through thick treacle rather than skating on ice. And I agree with you. There is a real laxness about how slow we can look on counter-attacks as well. Benji says, what do you think of a versatile attacking option like a Semenyo that would play predominantly off the left for us but can cover on the right when we need to bring that player in? I think that, as I said before, to sign a left-sided player, we're more likely to have to move one of Trossard or Martinelli on in the summer, and there's no guarantee that happens. I would go for a kind of a versatile attacking player like an Eze who can play on the left but can also play more centrally, because on the right, we've got Saka, we've got Nwaneri now as well as a really important option, and it's very hard to find that figurehead that can play on the right. Eze could potentially play there and has played there too. I'd go for that versatile attacking figure like an Eze, as well as a centre-forward like a Sesko or an Isak if possible. The bottom line is Arsenal have to spend their money on a striker. That's where the money needs to go in the summer. We all know that. The money has to go on a centre-forward. Absolutely without question. The majority of Arsenal's investment this summer, I want to see Arsenal going in early. I want to see them going in strong. I want to see them getting a deal done as quick as possible for a centre-forward. I want them having a pre-season. I want them adapting and adjusting. I don't want them, I really, really don't know how on earth we could justify not doing that business early. Klaus says, how old is Eze? I think it's 26. I think Eze. So you're signing somebody, of course, coming into, as what I was talking about earlier, right? He'll be 27 at the start of next season. So someone who's in there going to be getting their best years. And from an Arsenal perspective, if we're looking at options right now, that's the type of signing that we need. The only player that I'm looking at as more of a younger figure right now is Sesko. That's for me the only player I'm willing to kind of go as like a younger figure, because I think he already will give you a big impact now. That for me is kind of where I'm sitting at the moment. And so when I look at that figure of Eze, and I'm looking at Arsenal next season, Arsenal need players that are going to give them that immediacy. Arsenal need someone that needs no transition time, that knows the league, that has been performing to a very high standard, as we know Eze has been. I know less so this season, but I think overall we've seen an amazing output from him. He needs a move. I think it's a perfect fit. I think it's a really, really important age bracket to sign somebody in. I think we need that player in their prime years for next season, someone that's going to give you that immediate bang. And as I absolutely look at that figure as someone who does that. Ashmal says, which of these is the most disappointing game this season? Mine would be the FA Cup exit. I think West Ham at home is probably the most disappointing game, because if Arsenal win that and win, score goals, and we see that we can score goals with Marino up front, say Marino gets the ball rolling on goal scoring and finds some form from the start, and I think the game against Forest then goes differently, and suddenly Arsenal have got 5 more points than we do right now, and the gap to Liverpool, if we win our game in hand, could be 5 points rather than 10. So I think it has to be the West Ham game for me is the most disappointing. I know what you mean about the FA Cup, but frankly, if Arsenal was still in the FA Cup right now with all the injuries that we've got, I don't know how we would cope. I really don't know how we would cope with this situation as it is right now. Certainly players like, Nwaneri and Ødegaard and Rice and Partey, like, we don't have the depth. They would be getting overplayed as well. So I obviously want to win the FA Cup, but if we were in that competition, I don't see how we'd be anything other than worse. That we would be worse because of the lack of options that we've got. So yeah, I think that West Ham game has to be, for me, the most disappointing game of the season, without a doubt. Lee says, Tom, when you asked about the January transfer window and his claims that he wasn't involved, did you believe him? He has influence, we know this, but he's right in pointing out that in January, for instance, January was all about the people behind Arteta. We did 17 press conferences in January. That told you how busy the match day schedule. Arteta's primary focus, was on winning games and trying to win matches in January. As a manager, You have an influence on transfers. Yes, you have a say, you have a voice, but your main responsibility is the players that you have, the matches you have coming up, and that is where your focus is. In a summer transfer window, you are obviously going to have more time and influence and opportunities to work on that. But for Arteta, he needed to have those people behind him delivering what he needed, and that's why he was open to being so vocal in that January window about what he needed, about saying how short we were, about saying how we absolutely need to go and try and get a striker. That's why he was so open about that. He needed the people behind him to deliver while he was trying to get his players to deliver every 4 days in January. So, yeah, I do believe him, but ultimately, he is the one that's going to be held responsible for Arsenal's outcomes based upon what we have at the moment in the team. Boyd says, it makes me sick that the board never invested in January. We're going for a league title. And again, no fully fit striker. Alpha says, Tom, have you seen the Siemens? Have you seen the Siemens Says video with David Raya? I haven't actually, no, but I do believe that Raya just won Goalkeeper of the Year for the London Football Awards as well. But I've not seen that. Mike says, Ornstein suggested fairly categorically that Arteta wanted Watkins. That does smack of a little of not his decision, but a delivery issue. Again, there's no way that Arsenal ever make an offer for a player if Arteta doesn't want that player. It doesn't happen. While Arsenal, the people behind the scenes are in charge of getting those deals done, they won't ever make an offer for a player unless Arteta also wants that player. So it's their job to find and suggest, solutions that fit into what Arteta's expectations are. It was Aston Villa that came to Arsenal with the idea of Watkins. The offer that Arsenal put in was below their asking price, and Arsenal weren't willing to go any higher than the 40 million plus add-ons offer that they put in for Watkins. Suggestions, by the way, that 60 million gets Watkins are not true. 60 million is what, to my understanding, was kind of the starting point of negotiations to get Villa to the table, have a discussion about the price tag. So it wasn't a case of bid 60, he's yours. It was a case of offer 60, let's start having a conversation about what the end price, what the agreed fee is going to be. Now Arsenal went in at a price they felt that he was worth. It was still a record offer, of course, for a player of his age from a Premier League club to a Premier League club. But yeah, it didn't work out. But that offer doesn't go in unless Arteta wants the player. That's for sure. And, I had, as I mentioned at the time, I, without question, had my reservations about the idea of signing Watkins, but Arteta really wants to win. He really wanted a signing in January. He knew the situation. He really wanted to get a player in during that window, and sadly, we weren't able to do it. We weren't able to get it. So, yeah. Martin says, no way Villa sell both strikers. It's worth pointing out the whole talks with Villa about Watkins started before the John Duran situation with Al Nasser came up. The way in which, obviously, it came out made it look like that the Duran talks with Al Nasser happened, and then the Watkins stuff with Arsenal happened, when in reality, it was very much the other way around. The Watkins-Arsenal talks were first, then Al Nasser came in for John Duran. So there were timeline misconceptions based upon when those things were reported. If you actually have a look at the reports surrounding John Duran around the 20th of January, I think Fabrizio Romano reported that Duran would not leave. That Aston Villa would not be letting Duran leave in the January window. And yet, of course, the team comes in, puts in a ridiculous bid, and he's off. So, yeah, it's amazing what the transfer window can do. And obviously, the way in which the transfer window is reported obviously only gives us a bit of an idea about what's going on, as when you look from a fan perspective. But when you get that more information about what's going on, you get a bigger, broader picture, a more realistic picture of what's going on, and it starts to make a bit more sense why things happen. But that doesn't stop people coming up with crazy opinions, of course, based upon what they're reading, because that's all you've got access to. So that's why we try and clarify it as best as we can. Hugh is called says, question, Tom, do you think the absence of a creative goal scorer midfielder in the vein of a Kevin De Bruyne or a Bruno Fernandes warrants equal priority as the need for a striker? Well, I guess the argument is that, while Man City have definitely benefited from having Kevin De Bruyne and a player of that ilk, if you have a look at Liverpool's team, they're not necessarily getting loads of goals this season from midfield. I think Szoboszlai has 5 Premier League goals. McAllister has 3 Premier League goals. But Arsenal's goal scorers from last season, like Declan Rice and Ødegaard, or more so Ødegaard from the season before, their numbers have diminished a lot. Declan Rice has 1 Premier League goal this season. I think last season he might have had 7. Let me have a quick check. It was 5 or 7. Last season he had 7 Premier League goals and 9 Premier League assists last season, Declan Rice. This season he has 1 Premier League goal and 5 Premier League assists. So he had 16 goal contributions last season and he's on 6 this season. Rice has not had anywhere near as good of a season as he did last season. So yeah, that's that's the frustration. So you're right, yes, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Ultimately, Liverpool being carried by Salah, well, you can all see that. So it's not necessary. It doesn't feel like Liverpool have won the league. It feels like Salah's won the league, and the way in which that season gone down. When you've got a player that's just as good as that can give you as much as that across an entire campaign, you've got a great chance of winning a title. A great chance of winning a title. Mike says, how much more transparent do you think the club should be about the process and who does what? Am I being deluded to think that might appease? I mean, at the end of the day, Jason Ato is an interim sporting director. They're never going to put an interim sporting director on the stand. Like, that's just not going to happen. It wouldn't happen. So if it was Edu still in charge and we had the window that we had, I think we could be a lot more demanding about getting some answers specifically. I don't really like it when Arteta says that's a question for Jason, because in my answer that is like, well, if you're going to say that's a question for Jason, get him out here then. But that's never going to happen, is it? Like, we're never going to get Jason Ato on the stand because he's the interim. If it was Edu, if it was somebody they're going to appoint from March onwards, and we have very similar situations, that ultimately is that ultimately is where you're going to get a more realistic idea of getting somebody out to have a word. But when you've got an interim person in charge, that's never going to happen. Ishan says, funny how our points being in second place is closer to 10th place Villa than first place Liverpool. It's true, but we are still second in the league. Gary says, I didn't want Watkins. I would have preferred Duran, but Sesko is who I want, and I'm not changing my mind. It's Sesko, Openda, Zubamendi, and Cunha, and a quality backup keeper. So 2 strikers. I know Openda can play in wide positions, but if you're bringing in Openda, you're not bringing in another striker for me. But Sesko, I agree with. Zubamendi, I agree with. Cunha would be an interesting option. I definitely don't think you bring in Cunha if you're bringing in Openda. That doesn't make any sense. But certainly I'll be open to seeing Sesko and Cunha arriving, because I think Cunha could play off a wide position as well. Oliver says, do you think the board will back Arteta to fix most/all of the problems in the team? A striker, 2 forwards, a midfield. I really don't know why people think we're getting 3 forwards, including a striker. That's not happening. No, it doesn't. That's just so unrealistic. I think you can definitely expect the centre forward. I think that you could expect Arsenal to move for a wide player if indeed one of Trossard or Martinelli leaves. If not, I think kind of an attacking midfielder certainly could be something to look at if they're going to stay, like, as I say, an Eze. The midfielder being Zubamendi, a defender, yes. A backup goalkeeper, yes. So that, I think, is what realistically Arsenal's summer could look like, is 1 forward in terms of the centre forward, either a versatile attacking midfielder that can play maybe in wide areas on occasion, like an Eze. If one of Trossard and Martinelli leaves, then maybe that adds then the opportunity to add a wide player naturally into the team. Obviously, a midfielder, a defender, and a backup goalkeeper. That's what I would be more realistically expecting of a summer transfer window, is like 5 signings, striker, versatile attacking player, midfielder, defender, backup goalkeeper. Like 5 signings. That's what I'm really expecting this summer, is like 5 players. Any less than that is not good enough. Any less than 5 is not good enough at all. Abdul says, are Arsenal going to win the Premier League this season? I think so, mate. Mike says, good morning. Late today. We'll watch from the beginning. Have a good weekend. Thanks, Mike. Oliver Young says, how many deals do you think can be done in the summer? As I said, I think 5 is an expectation of mine. I'm expecting 5. And says Sesko and Ekatike for me, because I think Ekatike can also play on the wings, and he's got that dribbling ability too. DeLuca says, what changed your mind on Eze? I think obviously the Arsenal situation changes, isn't it? Arsenal situation changes. I think that's what's changed my view on him. Arsenal's scenario has changed. Odegaard's form has changed. So those things I think that you learn throughout the course of a season. That's why you change your mind on things, because you get presented different evidence. What's the point of having a mind if you don't change it? Ishan says, will those 5 signings win us anything next season? I have no idea, mate. You'd certainly hope so, wouldn't you? You'd certainly hope if Arsenal get the striker in that we know that they need, that they can get another attacking player in to offer depth, that they can replace Partey with Zubimendi in the summer when Partey's contract expires, that you bring in another defender to cover off the likes of Tomiyasu's injuries more effectively, someone who can be more naturally able, maybe someone that's got more ability to attack flanks and overlap and be more of a natural fullback. And then, of course, a number 2 goalkeeper in case Raya gets injured. I think you'd look at that and say it puts Arsenal in a far stronger position for next season. Yes, especially with Saka, Martinelli and Havertz hopefully back for the start of next season as well. Perry says, what do you think of Nuno's post-game comments on our striker situation? Yeah, we covered that at the start of the show. Again, I don't find that surprising at all. I asked Graham Potter after the game against West Ham whether he expected Moreno to play up top and how he prepared for it. And he was like, yeah, we guessed that would be the case. Like, we're very predictable. Like, we're so predictable what we're going to do right now. Granny Poo says, Tom, do you think that injuries to Jesus and Tomiyasu going well past summer window will affect our ability to sign new players? Unfortunately, yes. I think Tomiyasu and Jesus were sellable assets for the summer that we are now losing. So that will limit what we can do. Wages as well. You know, their wages are still on the club's books. They'll be covered to a degree insurance wise, but they're still on the club's books when they come back from injury. So that will be factored into our ability in signing players. Also, having Jesus coming back at the end of the year, if you've signed a striker, if you've signed another forward, having Jesus back in the squad is no bad thing. So that will be a benefit at some point. It'll be like a new signing. Oliver says, sorry, another question. But if we brought Isak but didn't address the other issues being made in that one signing, would it be a big failure? Oh, without a doubt, it'd be a big failure, Oliver. Yeah, because if Isak gets injured, then you've not strengthened at all. I'd rather sign 5 players than 3, including Isak. I'd rather make sure that we added quality across the team than in one position. Because if Isak gets an injury, it just undoes everything and you've not progressed. So I think we're better off spreading our investment across quality in multiple positions. That is the way forwards. That has to be the way forwards. Not less is not more in this situation. More is more. As long as they're quality players. More is definitely more. Perry says, guess I missed the start, but thanks anyway. You're welcome. Mr. Thugi says, it's not money, but personally, I wouldn't go above 120 million for Isak over that price point. We can buy 2 really good players instead of 1. Plus, with our luck, he would probably get injured. Exactly. Martin says, you can't just cancel a loan. It has to be agreed between all 3 parties. No way that Chelsea would have agreed to that. Where was Boyce's question? Did I miss it? Buy Neto out of his loan and get Rashford in. Simple. Cancel Sterling's. Like, yeah, it doesn't work like that, mate. You have to agree between all 3 parties, between the loaning club, the club the player is moved to, and the player has to agree as well. So, yeah, no, it's not simple. Unfortunately, I wish it was, but it's not. Soup says, who is going to lead this summer? Zinchenko, Kivior, Partey, Jorginho anymore? Lokonga, Tavares, permanent exits finally in the summer, obviously as well. Neto and Sterling's loans will finish. Who else could leave? Surprise leave could be Trossard. I don't sleep on Trossard potentially leaving the club in the summer as well. Definitely a chance he goes. I think if, say, a Saudi Arabian side was to come in for him again, Arsenal would probably entertain a big offer for Trossard from one of those clubs. Joe says Tavares, Lokonga, Vieira, yeah, that's a good point. Fabio Vieira, Partey, Jorginho, Zinchenko, Kivior, and Nelson. Tini, of course, leaving on a free. Nelson, I don't know about Nelson because I think he could miss the summer with that hamstring injury. because he had to have surgery. So I don't know if Nelson will leave in the summer because I think he'll be out for the rest of the season, potentially into the summer transfer window as well. And I don't know if anyone's going to want to sign a player who's just had a major hamstring surgery. So I don't really know. I don't see that happening. Ridiculous says Trossard to go to Al Nassr for 50 million is good. I don't know you'd get that much. I think you'd be doing very well to make back our money on Trossard, like 30 million. I think we'd do well if we got that from a Saudi side. So let's see. Mike says, I'm not just meant to watch today. 2 knocks at the door. One, a very talkative neighbour. Did I miss anything? Did Tom say that we should have kept Nketiah? No, I didn't, Mike. I'm taking a 30 million all day. I don't think he solves our issues. He adds another striker, but he's not taking us to the title, Eddie Nketiah. So, yeah, no, it's not going to happen, I'm afraid, mate. Ridiculous says, would it be wise to just put in a few young strikers from the youth team up top, someone like a Harriman or Noose? I think they should be given more opportunities than we're seeing, mate. Yeah, without a doubt, they should be getting more opportunities than they're getting right now. So that's hopefully what we will see. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this morning's show. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate you all being here and joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to take your questions, tackle your thoughts. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for being here. And if you could drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We do these shows every morning at 8 a.m. if I'm not traveling. So please make sure you join us tomorrow morning. On Saturday, we'll be looking ahead, of course, to a weekend without Premier League action for Arsenal, or even FA Cup action, indeed, because that's what's going on this weekend and why there's no games. And we start to look ahead to that fixture against PSV on Tuesday. I'll be flying to Amsterdam on Monday before getting a train to Eindhoven. So I'll probably be pre-recording a show for you on Monday to go out while I'll be at the airport waiting to fly again after flying to Girona the other week. And now we're off to the Netherlands. Never been to the Netherlands before, so very much looking forward to that. Have a great day. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.